Welcome to the PitchMark World IP Day 2024 coverage, where today we're going to be focusing on licensing and especially in the context of environmental, social, and governance issues. How can you, as an innovator, make sure that firstly you're contributing to the sustainable development goals, but also you're building a sustainable business on your own, that all your innovations and creativity isn't just for the greater good, but also that you are able to profit from them. We have a special guest with us today. Joining us from Las Vegas is our special guest, Stephen Key, the co-founder of InventRight, a holder of more than 20 patents, and himself an innovator, a serial innovator, as we are about to find out. And of course, Frank Rittman, our own legal counsel at PitchMark, joining us from Bangkok. Good morning, firstly, Frank, and good morning, Stephen in Nevada.
Good morning,
thank you very much.
Great to have you with us, Stephen. You know, when we're talking about IP and sustainability, often, people immediately gravitate towards environmental issues. So let's tackle that first, because the theme of World IP Day is all about having a sustainable industry, but that it is these innovations, the creativity that helps us to save the planet. So first of all, where do you see that picture? How much protection do people actually need when it comes to some of those world-saving innovations?
Well, I think you need a lot of protection. I think you have to look at what you're creating and protect it, not only from how to manufacture it correctly, maybe even the branding, maybe for a trademark, maybe even the copyright of your marketing material. I think you need a whole package. Like anything that you create, you have to have that ownership, and those IP tools give you that ownership. So I'm a big believer in filing often and filing quite a bit to protect those innovations.
Clearly, there are lots of companies that have, in fact, been working on sustainability solutions, hoping, obviously, to reduce carbon emissions, to capture carbon, to bring down global temperatures, or at least stop them from rising. I suppose many of the people who you work with at InventRight do come to you with ideas for sustainability. Are there any in particular that leap out or spring to mind?
Well, it's growing. I'm seeing it from all different angles. The retailers are requiring a lot of the customers I work with to reduce the plastic in their packaging. And it started over with a large retailer over in the UK, Tesco. It's been demanding it. And it's slowly traveling everywhere around the world. So I'm seeing a lot of it. And it's challenging for innovators to reduce that plastic, to come up with other solutions that customers do want to use, that it has all the things that the retailers are demanding, but also produce it at a price point that the consumers will purchase. So it is challenging, but we're seeing it from all different angles. And I think it's the big driving force are the retailers. And I'm really glad to see it.
Well, I mean, that raises the question, right? Whether the people that you work with, who you bring to market with your licensing expertise, do they actually create, things that we would ordinarily associate with sustainability? Let's say, solar panels or carbon capture solutions, which of course are on a very large scale. Or are you finding that actually the whole sustainability question is something that all the innovators have to answer, no matter what the product is that they bring to you?
Well, I think all innovators are thinking about it because it is something that's affecting all of us. So even though they might be creating in other spaces, I think they cannot really avoid it. And I'm glad to see it. So we're seeing inventors all over the world jumping in. And I'm glad finally they're looking at that growing demand as an opportunity to help the situation, but also to participate in that new business. So there's a lot of growth, but it all comes back now to how to protect that innovation in such a way that has value, protect in such a way that it can be produced at a price point people will purchase, and reaching out to those companies that are really interested in that new technology. So it's growing, and we're seeing it actually grow all around the world.
Do you have any specific examples of some of the people you're working with on the licensing front who might have some very specific innovations that are not only unique, but also answer the sustainability question?
Yes, I work with two inventors that are very passionate about removing the plastic rings on beverages. And they came up with a product called Fishbone, which is a recyclable 100% curbside recyclable package. And I have an example here, which is a really nice package that will hold containers in place. It has a great billboard for graphics. It can go through their supply chain without a problem. So it has the right price point. It works with some of the standard equipment already in place, but it checks all the boxes. So I'm seeing that people that are very concerned that maybe aren't even in the innovation space to begin with, but want to be in it, that they're coming forefront and say, look, what can we do? We're very creative. Let's jump in there and let's see if we can do something that will work. So I think it all starts with that passion of saying, look, we need to reduce the amount of plastic, our footprint on this planet. And I'm really enjoying working with that passionate group of inventors, because it's not easy to do. And you're going to have quite a few obstacles along the way. So you need that passion, but you also need the ability to show whoever you're going to license it to that you understand their supply chain, their equipment, and you're able to design around it so you can produce it in such a way it can be scaled. Because we're not talking about simple things like maybe kitchen appliances or gadgets. We're talking about something of large scale. We're talking about, hundreds of thousands of millions, even billions of packaging that's going through that system all the time. So just a little bit of a reduction is really a big deal. So I'm enjoying personally having people reach out to me that have that passion, and they're willing to work towards that goal.
Awesome. Can you just hold up the six-pack again? What actually is the innovation about it?
Well, what it is, this is 100% curbside material.
Mm-hmm.
There's no in fact, in this package alone, there's no plastic whatsoever, but Fishbone did this piece of it. And what's really nice, it's got the full graphics. It holds everything in place. You can see on the top here. So usually how this would be sold before, and still now, is that maybe there'd be plastic rings that you have to cut. Those are terrible. Maybe this would be in a full box. So you're reducing the amount of material there. So it has a lot of benefits. The billboard is what the marketers want. They don't want to hide their product so they can see their product, which is really nice. They can see it, but still be strong enough to go through that whole supply chain without breaking. That's the catch.
And none of those rings that albatrosses out at sea will snare their beaks on, I suppose. That's the
Yeah,
aim.
I think everybody has seen those photographs of turtles, and I think a lot of people have seen those shows like Blue Planet that's talking about what's happening to the world in terms of how much plastic that's being used. So these are big ideas. These are ideas that are going to change the industry, and there's quite a few of these manufacturers, such as Atlantic, that's looking at this sustainability and not only changing parts of their business, but changing all of their business. And so all of us get to participate in some part of it. And there's quite a few innovators, inventors that are helping with the cause. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the whole innovation life cycle then, because obviously when you are a creator or an innovator, quite clearly, yes, you want to do the right thing by the planet, but as I said earlier, you have to eat. So how much of an issue do you see it as a social and a governance issue for people to respect intellectual property, the sustainability not of the planet, but of the creators and innovator community?
Well, you have to have those tools of ownership for people to take that risk. in terms of time and money to work on projects that eventually can come to the market and they can get paid. So I think those tools are extremely important. And I think it's important not only to the inventors that are filing that intellectual property and giving them protection, but it's also important to the vendors that are using that intellectual property on new packaging innovations, because they want something that gives them a point of difference in the marketplace. They want something they can come out that's new. They need that point of difference to market what they're doing, because it does cost everybody money along the way. They have to spend time and money to build packaging that will work through the supply chain. But the machinery that costs to implement this is in the millions of dollars. So that's a huge investment. And for everybody to play their part, there has to be some type of protection, some type of ownership.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think there's some interesting precedents that we set when we talk about things like the greater good, and we look back at what happened during COVID-19. And there was a rush to talk about IP waivers, because maybe it was more important to have a vaccine out there than anybody's intellectual property rights. So we had a lot of public statements at very high levels that sort of were against that notion. But what we saw instead was something on the order of 300 voluntary licensing agreements that were set up that had transfer technology provisions in them. I would say it's actually what IP is actually what solved the COVID crisis, rather than the other way around, that by abandoning IP rights, somehow we solved COVID and came up with a vaccine quicker than we could. Unfortunately, I think that same sort of logic extends itself into things like clean air and fresh water. It's easy to say, well, this is more important than your rights, so you give it to us. But I think, as Stephen just pointed out, who's going to bother taking that investment and that incentive if the world reaction is simply going to be to abrogate those rights entirely?
I would have to agree 100%. You have to give everyone the incentive to spend that type of money and time. And I think you're right, that vaccine was developed extremely quickly, and it was because of that. And take that away, I think you're going to slow down innovation. I think in some places you'll stop it.
And it's interesting that even though the world came up with that consensus, and the Biden administration even said, okay, that's all right with us, nobody actually ever implemented it. It wasn't necessary.
No, and you need to be able to develop any technology and do a technology transfer and collect some type of royalty for that, to give you an incentive to pass that along to others. So there's a great business model there.
And then the other side of that is, too, in some instances, you've got particular countries that insist on technology transfers as a cost of doing business with them. If you want to get into certain aspects of China, you've got to sign away all your technology. And that also became a big issue during the Trump administration.
Well, that's a whole nother problem. I think the way I like to look at it, a lot of people benefit with that technology transfer. If I had to spend all the time and money to develop something, I would rather have someone that's already done it, transfer that technology. I can get up running faster, pay them a small royalty, and we're in business.
But that should be your voluntary decision. It shouldn't be something that's imposed upon you as a requirement to get in the door.
No, that there should be an option if you want to, if that's your business model.
Right. Right. But it shouldn't be that you're told, if you want to get into this market, you've got to give your local partner all of your technology that you've developed on your own.
I don't see why anybody would develop it then.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't that exactly the point, that if we're going to develop sustainability, because there's so many ways of looking at World IP Day 2024's theme, isn't it? IP and sustainability, yeah, sure, it might be the IP to, as I said, bring down temperatures or fight climate change. But do you currently see intellectual property as an industry as sustainable, when there are so many people who would much rather rip off somebody else's idea than develop their own?
Well, I think you're always going to have a few bad players out there, right? But I think there's huge benefit in filing intellectual property. It does a couple things. It's a great way to license technology. It's a great way to raise money. It's a great way to show someone that you understand a technology enough maybe they want to join what you're doing. So not only is it a protection tool, it's a selling tool. So I think people have to look at it a little bit differently. Yes, you'll have competition. That's just the way it is today. And that forces, I think, companies to really run a good business, right? The one thing they cannot steal is your brand. They might be able to steal your product. Okay, great. But if you have good customer service and you've got customers that love your product, they love your brand, they cannot take that away. So I think you just have to navigate those waters a little bit. That's the way I'm looking at it. And also, there's tools to protect yourself too, right? I mean, we mentioned patents, but also online sellers. I mean, they're going to be around forever, but you could do copyright, which is a great form of intellectual property, design patents, trademarks. There's all these other tools that need to be talked about more of protecting all of it. And that gives us an ability to shut down some of these people that are some of the bad characters.
Well, what's your sense, Stephen, when you talk to some of the big guns like you have, like Walmart, 7-Eleven, and so on, do you get the sense that actually they do respect your IP? When you go along and pitch it, do you get the sense that they are careful and cautious in the way that they then listen to your idea and possibly adopt your idea?
I think more and more they are. And I think the reason why they're willing to listen to it is that because of social media, the fight is in the court of public opinion today. And the last thing they want is someone complaining about their brand, that they've spent so much money building a brand, when they have people on social media complaining about their brand. They don't want it. So I think what you're going to see, and I think you're seeing it now, that they have to, it's better to do the right thing, right? It's better to be aware of it. It's better to maybe even highlight or promote the uniqueness from that innovator, which is a great selling tool, great marketing tool. And maybe it's better for their brand to do the right thing. I think you're seeing a shift.
Yes, and that's I guess the crux of the final point here on our conversation today, isn't it? Whether or not a lot of those companies that are throwing a whole lot of money and effort at looking to be sustainable from an environmental perspective, are you seeing that same sort of effort being devoted to protecting IP as part of their social and governance efforts?
I would say yes. I would think that you have to look at, from my perspective too, you need just more than intellectual property. I mean, it's know-how, it's your team, it's your knowledge about the industry. It's a whole package that comes together. So I think when you present it the correct way with your team and your knowledge and your trade secrets and you bundle everything together, there's no reason why anybody should work around that if you approach it correctly. And don't give anybody a reason to work around you. Be an asset. And I think if you approach it that way in any industry, you're going to find people are going to welcome you, want to work with you because you're making their life a lot easier. And they should be thankful that you're there with something new and something they can use.
Yeah, no, I can't. I agree with everything you said. Doing the right thing is really part of the whole culture of it. I'm curious, have you had experiences, Stephen, at the procurement stage before the registrations and everything, where these bad actors have done the wrong thing, and what's been your client's experience in addressing it?
Well, I think you have to pick your partners carefully. And I think you have to find the right culture of a company that wants to work with you and respects intellectual property. And if you can find that company that does respect intellectual property and has the right culture, you can take the necessary steps to go forward and make sure you launch quickly, if you can, get it out there and make sure you've got a strong brand and compete in the marketplace. So I do believe it's all of our goal is to find those type of companies. And there are a lot of them out there. There really is. And what company doesn't want to see a new idea? Right? But you have to approach it the right way with the team to match maybe some of the concerns, take away risk to get them to say yes. So I'm seeing more and more companies embracing the word open innovation that we're going to open their doors. We want to work with you. We like that you're bringing us something new. We like that you have a team. We like that you're taking away risk. So I do believe this whole world of open innovation is growing by leaps and bounds, but it all comes down to finding the company with the right culture that embraces that too.
And in your experience, how are companies going about expressing that to the public at large? How are they making themselves known that they are the good actors rather than the bad actors?
I don't know if they are. I would like to think that the companies that are on social media that are, I mean, when you're on social media, you're a target, right? So I like to tell everybody, if you want to find a company that you think that's innovative, look at the products that they're launching, look at their ad campaigns, look at how they treat their customers, look at the reviews on Amazon, look what people are saying about the company, and look at how they're sending that message of their brand. That speaks volumes. So I think it's easy to find the good players. And I also tell everybody, if you want to do a little bit of homework, just do a background check. It's easy to do and see if there's any complaints out there. And everybody likes to complain, so you have to be careful, read through it. But if you're a good player, well, let's put it this way. If you're a bad player, it's hard to hide today. So I like that today, to me, the fight is in the fight of public opinion. So I do think a lot of innovators, a lot of inventors have more power than they even know they do, because they have a voice, and that voice is powerful. It takes years to build a brand. It takes years to build trust, but it takes seconds to destroy it.
Yeah. Yeah, first impressions are always so important. So you're right, companies doing the right thing, if you will. Is there a particular story that comes to mind, or an anecdote where a company did the wrong thing and one of the people that you work with really had to go about addressing it? And if so, what did they do?
Yeah, there's a great story about a good friend of mine that had a product that was selling well, but one of the bad players reached out to a major retailer and started carrying the product. Now, the inventor was very smart. He didn't poke him in the eye. He didn't start a lawsuit, because that's a whole different can of worms. But he just reached out to the buyer and said, look, I'm the original. I'm the person. Here's my intellectual property. I would appreciate if you would take it down. Not only did they take it down, they ended up buying his. So that told me that sometimes these companies don't know. They might not know that this inventor out here had this product. So I think you go to them in such a way of saying, look, how do we work together? This is what I own. That's why you need to have the IP, right? And you need to tell your story. This is another thing I think is really important for innovators and inventors. Don't be afraid to tell your story. Be the first, and create a fan base of raving fans that love you and they love your product. It's one of the best protections you can possibly have. I also think that when you license your technology to a major player, that's also one of the best protection from an innovator or an inventor. They've got great distribution, they've got relationships, and they can kind of force people, maybe kind of steer them to do the right thing. So I think the opportunity today is greater than ever, but I do believe this too. We have to write good patents. We have to write patents that give a good roadmap, that maybe include the manufacturing, the most efficient way, maybe workarounds, maybe variations, and maybe do in such a way that it really creates value, and they do their homework to know that they do have a point of difference. And if you look at it that way, and you present your point of difference because you've done your homework with a great product, with the right company, everything seems to work pretty smoothly.
Got it.
Well, isn't that interesting? That you actually, because Stephen, so many people actually want to hide their innovation. They don't want to be out there talking about it, lest they give somebody else the idea. You're saying that actually you need to shine plenty of sunshine on it.
It's timing too. You don't want to get out there too early, right? You don't want to have public disclosure when it's too early. You want to do it at the right time. And so you are if you're an innovator, you're newsworthy. And social media loves those type of stories, but it's timing. I'm a big believer in filing the intellectual property. If you've got a big project, which I'm working on, it takes a long time. So please have people sign NDAs in case you have to file again. But the public disclosure is really interesting because it's different around the world. So if you've got these international ideas, really understand how that public disclosure could impact your filing. Very important. So I also believe you need a good partner, a good patent attorney or patent agent to help you strategize your patents strategy at the very beginning, and you budget correctly so you really know your goals together. I also believe that innovators and inventors need to be more control of their inventions, understand them better than anybody, and provide that great information to an IP professional so they can do a great job for you. So it's really up to us inventors to supply patent attorneys with the right information to protect it correctly and have the right strategy to go forward in the marketplace.
And I was just going to jump in on the point that you made earlier, Stephen, about the fact that innovators seem to have more power. But it's very disempowering when you, as a small company, once again, maybe you're an architectural firm, right? And you're pitching a blueprint to a large construction company. That company might have much more market power than you and your partners do in your architectural firm. And therefore, when they then, kind of assume or subsume some of your ideas into the actual construction work that goes on, actually you feel quite powerless. But you're saying that you have much more power than you think.
Yeah, I think we're looking at it the wrong way. I think you have the ability to file faster than they do. You have the ability to tell a different story than they do. You have the ability to look at the landscape and pick and choose those good players you want to work with. And also realize too that no one, can you imagine being in a room when an idea came in and go, hey, let's steal this? That makes no sense at all. But I also think that as an innovator, inventor, you need to file workarounds and variations. You have to play a different game today. You have to realize that when you submit an idea to a company, they're going to maybe find workarounds. That's fair. But as an inventor, file intellectual property on all the variations and workarounds. So if you've done this great job, when they see the IP, there's no way around it. That's why they pay you.
Stephen, in your experience on the patent side with the clients that you work with, do they typically file or begin the application process before they send the idea out at the procurement stage to somebody who might be willing to monetize it for them?
Well, yes, I do believe filing a provisional patent application at the first time is a smart move.
So they would signal that then when they send that creative idea out by indicating to the recipient there's a patent pending or an application that's pending. How do you build that awareness and that education on the person who's receiving it, that this is something that I need to pay attention to, that's protected, and that the person who sent it to me is aware of their rights?
There's a sequence of events that need to happen. And the first one, when you show a new idea to a company, don't show intellectual property, show the benefit of it, right? Because I think you're really always selling benefits. So your marketing material is going to show the benefit, but not the IP. And if the benefit is strong enough, they're going to want more information. They're going to engage. I have a lot of questions. So now you start to build a paper trail. The next stage is when they start to ask for more information. That's when you ask for an NDA, right? And most likely they're not going to sign yours. That's okay. You sign theirs, look at it, make sure it's fair and balanced. Okay. So once they ask now to see more, you show them more. They might even ask to see your provisional patent application. I love when they say it. I love when they ask for that. Because if I write my provisional patent application in such a way, I call it transaction ready, meaning I've got manufacturing, workarounds, variations, a lot of drawings. I've got it in such a way that they look at it, it's like a blueprint. They have a hard time determining that this is going to issue or not issue, because it's done so well that no one within those companies can make really a true evaluation of it. So it's a gray area. There's no claims, even better. They don't know. But I also tell them this: here's my provisional patent application, and I'm filing more intellectual property as we're speaking. So you're always filing one step ahead. Now, here's the catch. When they see the provisional patent application, they always come back and say, look, what about the prior art? Because there's always prior art. I love that question, because if you truly know your point of difference, that is an opportunity to sell, to say, yes, of course there's prior art, but let me tell you why mine's different, right? Maybe there's prior patents out there, but you haven't seen mine on the marketplace. And that's what I found intellectual property on.
Yeah.
And once you state that, everybody gets quiet, right? Because you're bringing knowledge to them. So I do believe that when you do this in the correct sequence, and you've done some homework before you just sent it to anybody, and you sold the benefit, and they start to share it, because once they see the marketing material, maybe the video, maybe the sell sheet, they start to share it internally. So you got this momentum going. Now here's the catch here too. To really get these deals done, and some big deals, I always get a customer that wants it. It's called market demand. It keeps everybody honest, right? Because if I go to a manufacturer first, there's no incentive to do anything. But when I bring a customer saying, look, this customer wants it, I need for you to make it, there's business on the table. They don't even pay attention to the intellectual property now. They're looking at the business. And when you bring it all together, you bring a customer, you've got the right intellectual property, you got the right knowledge, you bring a whole package. So they look at this and go, wow, I want to work with you because you're doing more than just say, hey, I got this idea. No, you're presenting it differently. So that's how you keep everybody honest. Because if I bring a customer to somebody, the last thing they're going to do is work around me.
Yeah.
Stephen, I have no other questions. Frank, anything else from you?
No, I think that's about it. We've had a really full and fair discussion.
Stephen, anything that I know we could go on for hours, but for our conversation on World IP Day and the whole thing around sustainability and meeting sustainability goals, anything else that you wanted to mention?
No, I just want to say that I'm seeing more and more innovation happening all around the world with my members, and they're leveraging the power of intellectual property to get licensing deals, not only in their own country, but other countries as well. And they're able to license that technology and raise money to start their own manufacturing if they wanted to. But I'm seeing it happen everywhere. But you have to understand, I think, IP. I think you need to understand the companies you're dealing with, your industry. I think you need to bring value to the table. And I think you need to work with them in such a way that they consider you an asset. So I'm really happy to be in this space, and I'm really thankful that you asked me to give a short talk on intellectual property. So thank you very much.
Well, it's been great to have you with us, Stephen Key. Thank you so much for joining us from Nevada this morning for World IP Day 2024. And on Frank Rittman's behalf, I'm Mark Laudy. Thanks for watching.